in this process, it's so important that you get this. It offers this time now, say it again, captivity is often the catalyst for change. This change offers us the opportunity to awaken to a new walk with God, to replenish our strength, and then to arise with a renewed purpose. You see, if you awaken but you don't rise up with a renewed purpose, then saints, I got to tell you something. It's going to be tough. You're going to have a tough journey. You have to arise and come out with a new, renewed purpose of life. When we begin to see the potential for revival, restoration, and reformation, with the opportunity to reach the lost and plant churches and reach generations, educate generations, and generation 1, generation 2, out of my new book that we wrote about, and God's plan, receiving the wealth of the wicked that's laid up for the just. You see, we're coming out maybe into revival, some will say, maybe restoration, some will say, maybe even a reformation, some will say. I don't really care how we end up, but we're coming out of something and it's going to cause change. It's not going to only be us changing. We're going to change things around us. Never again shall we tolerate the way things have unfolded. We should never let us be duped by these people that are being led by pharmacy companies and by corrupt people selling things and governors asking for extreme things just so that they can get money to pay their lousy handling of their own debt. There's a whole world of corruption going on, and the church is going to be a prophet and speak out of captivity. We're not going to be led astray again. We're going to come out and speak to the things that need to be spoken to, and that's so important in this day. And then we'll be dissatisfied. When we come out and we start either going revival, reformation, whatever comes out, we're going to be dissatisfied with sitting complacent in our captivity. I believe it. I see people. How many of you know I'm watching people this want to go to the beach down in California? I mean, they just got out. I mean, people, I live near the water, and they were on their boats yesterday, cleaning them and working on them, and people were in their boats, and they were there into the night, and they had colored lights on their boats, and they're having parties and all, and because they've been bottled up, and they can't take it. And they're going to be people like that are going to be dissatisfied, but we're coming out of the real captivity. You see, our captivity is the real captivity because it holds us into slavery of the ideologies of the Babylonian system of the God, little g, of this world. My God is over the whole earth, but he put man, his man, and gave him keys to the kingdom to make a difference in the world. And we've got to come out of our fears and our lack of faith and rise up and be all the church is meant to be. Now, in that process, in that dissatisfaction, we will not miss the opportunities of God in issuing ourselves, our mandates to the entire generation. We're going to declare to generations 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're going to declare the message of the kingdom. And I'm excited about the fact that we're going to have our wonderful Compassion Commission this July right here, both virtual and live, right here for Rock City Church. Patrick Kitely will be with us as well. It's a 2-day event on June the 28th and 29th. That's a Sunday night and all day Monday. I'm excited about the fact that Generation 2 is going to be able to come, and we're going to download into them so that when they go back to school, they're going to have an impact. We've got to teach our children right now that they don't have to learn the system of Babylon as the only thing to learn. And that's what they get in the educational system. That's what they get on the colleges. They get taught a Babylonian system of the God, little g, of this world. And we've got to come out of this captivity with a new message, with a message of hope and a message that will challenge our world around us, to impact the culture, to impact politics, to impact the economics and social agendas, along with the education systems, with God's kingdom in full display. How many of you know, many of you have been asked to probably share your faith with somebody. Many of you have probably been asked, what is your opinion of this? Many of you have been even asked probably, what does your pastor say, et cetera, et cetera. And I've never seen an easier time to share the gospel. I have a neighbor that I get to talk to just a lot lately, and I'm talking to him. I'm talking to him about the things of God. He's asking me. I'm not just trying to flap my gums and bug this man. I'm trying to be respectful to his space and all, and yet he keeps, asking because people want to know. People want to know, what is God's view of all this that's going on? And you, the church, if you'll hear the message of faith, if you'll hear the message that there are two systems going on, and we're faced with this Babylonian, corrupt, vile, immoral system, and we're going to have to address it, and we're going to have to speak to it. That's why I watch Kanye West and some of those guys, and Bieber and some of those guys coming out of, and I even watch some of the Hollywood characters coming out of their being isolated in that captivity of Babylon. They're starting to come out. They're starting to share their faith. They're starting to say, wait a minute, I don't believe that the president, Mr. Trump, is a crazy man, and he's got some good thought. He's helped the nation. And so all of a sudden, there's some things shifting. And saints, I'm going to tell you, everything that can be shaken shall be shaken. If you thought there was shaking in politics before, you better get some good shock absorbers and glue them to your backside, because you're going to need to be able to bob and weave, because this thing's going to shake. Everything that can be shaken will be shook. And different things are going to get exposed. They're exposing the FBI. They're exposing the CIA. They're exposing these things. Are God doing this? He's exposing the corruption. But saints, listen to me. If God opens this up and he exposes all of these vile Babylonian systems, if the church doesn't hear and rise up in faith and occupy the new role of being the voice of reason, the voice of peace, the voice of wisdom, the voice of deliverance, then the Babylonian system will replace itself with even a worse system. Are you hearing me today? I see an amen, but I bet you I could get a whole bunch of them amens today, because listen to me, that system has had its day. It's like Israel. When Israel was coming out, and you find with Daniel, you find with Ezra, when they were coming out, at the last days and weeks, old Nebuchadnezzar, in Daniel's case, Nebuchadnezzar got dealt with. He was eating grass like a wild donkey. He was out in the fields taking hands of grass and eating it. He had lost his mind. I want you to know, God will send a spirit of confusion, a spirit that will come over some of these politicians, and they won't be able to speak clearly. They won't be able to pronounce their vileness. They won't be able to declare what they've declared with absolute freedom, because God is hearing the prayers of the saints, and he's going to cause the airways to be interfered with by the prayers, and we're going to hear a clear word. We're going to hear clearness come, and God is going to speak, and reformation and revival and restoration is going to start to take place in places you wouldn't even imagine. There's going to be outbreaks in states where they haven't let prayer be in the center of the legislated body. Prayer is going to get invited back into these states, back into their capitals. Trust me when I tell you, this is the word of the Lord. They're going to come back in. You're going to find schools that are going to say, I don't care, we must have prayer back into school. And you'll watch, there'll be legislation and bodies that will judge it, and judges that will give lean to it. That's why the president has replaced so many judges because God was setting this thing up. You need to hear that today. There's a shift coming, and the Babylonian system is going to run out of energy. It's going to run out of con jobs. It's going to run out of its manipulation. Even vileness will be exposed. Even the corruption in the Hollywood medium is going to get exposed. I'm telling you, this is a shift like we have never seen. Watch this. Watch this now. I've always been intrigued, and I'm going to bring it to a close with this little bit here. So stay with me now. I'm trying to drive it home. You got to understand how hard this is. I'm a preacher. I like to preach, and I love it when some people are in here yelling, "Go on, preacher! Hey, pastor!" and they're shouting. Some of them are standing up. Man, that makes me like a bull with a red flag. I want to preach even more. So I'm having to dream right now. I'm having to imagine that there's some saints shouting out at me right now. But there's a day coming. Come on, there's a day coming. Now, I'm always intrigued when I read the early parts of the gospel of Jesus and how careful he was and deliberate he was when he was rounding up his crew, or his posse, some would say, or the band of misfits, some would say. Others would say his disciples. And so Jesus was methodical. He was deliberate as he went into those regions of Jerusalem, around the surrounding areas, the Sea of Galilee and other places, and he was rounding up this crew. Now, let me show you something here. This is really amazing. If you would look, and he seemed like he was especially interested in fishermen. You know, that I have to tell you, that's what makes me just like Jesus so much. He liked boats. He liked to be in boats, and he liked to fish. And look, Jesus was awesome. Now, there's only one place that I found that Jesus ever fished. And when he did, it broke their nets. It had to get other boats to come and help them. So that's my kind of guy, man. When I go fishing with a guy like that because he knows how to catch fish. I love to fish. And the state won't let us fish. There's something wrong with that. But anyway, listen to me. I want you to look at this scripture now. He was so clear. He goes down to the Sea of Galilee. And he's interested, but watch these two things. In Luke chapter 5, verse 1 and 3. Luke chapter 5 and verse 1 and 3. I want you to see this now. Watch this. Chapter 5, verse 1 through 3. Now it occurred that while the people pressed upon Jesus to hear the message of God, he was standing at the lake of Gennesaret, which is the Sea of Galilee. I've been there. It's a fascinating place. And he saw two boats drawn up by the lake, but the fishermen had gone down from them, and they were washing their nets. You get a picture now. Jesus goes down to the water, down by the lake there, and a couple of boats are drawn up into the shore real close, and he notices there's no men on the boat. And he looks around and he sees up on the shore a little ways, he sees some men, and they are working feverishly on their nets. And the nets were massive, and they got them out, and they've hung them up with some boards and some sticks, and they're doing something. They're cleaning the nets. Oh, watch this now. They're cleaning out the nets. What they used was, I come from a fishing family. Now, some of my uncles and aunts were down in Cape Hatteras, one of the fishing capitals of the world. And I grew up down there myself as a young man and spent many days down there and even owned a home down there. So I understand that principle of being a fishing town. And so Jesus is down there. He's at the lake, And he comes up to these boats and sees there's nobody in them. He turns around, he sees the guys, and they're up there on the shore. And these nets were called gill nets. And they have a square every, so many inches, however size. And usually it's about 4 to 5 inch, 6 inch square. And it's tied with 4 knots. And then the next square, and that forms the net. And the fish swims in the net. And then he freaks out because his body won't go through, and he opens his gills. When he goes to pull back, he can't get out of the net. It's called a gill net. And that's what drowns him, and that's what causes him to get caught. And so in that process, they were cleaning the nets. Now, really fascinating, at the 4 corners of the net, they tie the net together with the next square, and they tie it together, and when they tie it, those knots are called see-nothings. The knots on the corners are called, 4 corners, they're called see-nothings. And that really is important because those are like apostles and prophets and evangelists and pastors and teachers. they are see-nothings. They disappear. It's the net, which is who you are, and the net is so that you catch the fish. So Jesus goes up, and what are they doing? They're cleaning the nets. Why do they do that? Well, because when they catch these fish, a lot of times the fish die, or parts of the body of the fish get broke off and get caught up in the web of the net. And if the fish sees the dead fish in the net, the fish won't go to the net. He'll swim away because the dead fish tells them something's wrong. And so they were cleaning the nets because they were going to go out again and fish, and they had to clean the nets. What is going on right now in the coronavirus syndrome and the situation right now? The church is busy. It better be. God's people better be real serious about get your net clean, because the next time you go fishing, you're going to catch a lot of fish, because this season is the time to get the boat and the nets and everything ready, because we're going to catch fish. Watch this now. If you read a little further, and getting into one of the boats. So Jesus walks away. He goes down to one of the boats. He crawls up in it. And he just happens to get, of course we know it was divinely appointed, he gets into Peter's boat, right? Peter, who is Simon the fisherman. They don't know each other. And he gets in the boat and he requests him, would you draw your boat out? Would you take your boat out a little ways? And he sits down and he continues to teach the people and the crowd of people around him in the boat. So he's teaching them about the gospel and about the Father and all these things. And when he stopped speaking, he said to Simon, verse 4, Peter, put out into the deeper water and lower your nets. Now, they had obviously brought the nets back to the boat. They had them all cleaned up. How many of you know God gives you a warning and he gives you a time? Get your net clean, because the next time I'm going to need it, you're going to be catching fish. How many of you know a lot of times we don't hear God, we disobey God, and we're not ready for what God wanted to do to bless us. That's why Rock City Church is so blessed, is because we were already feeding people. We were ready for tens and thousands, 4,500 pounds of food to show up. We're ready for food to come this week. We got the warehouse. It's all built. We got the truck so we can move it. We got the freezers. We're ready. We got people ready to get the food. You see, because we live every day with an anticipation that this is the day that God is going to do something new. And you got to get into that mode and hear the words of Jesus. Get your net clean. Get your net clean. All the unrighteousness, all the ugliness out of your net, so that God can use you to catch a great harvest.
Thank you for watching Rock City Church Online. We pray this message strengthens and encourages you to be all God has called you to be. You can support Rock City Church by giving online through the links in the description, or by visiting our giving page at GIVER.CC. Join us for our next live stream on Thursdays at 7 p.m. and Sundays at 10:30 a.m. And remember, our prayer room and prayer line are always available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For prayer, call our 24-hour prayer line at 410-882-2689.